Today, we're digging into a really fascinating paper from the journal Art and Media Studies. It's called Critique and Analysis of Social Media's Role in the Corona Pandemic, based on Technopoly theory. And it's by Mohammed Ali Ashuri Kasomi and Mariam Parvizi. They take a classic media theory and use it to look at a massive global crisis. And honestly, their insights are crucial for anyone thinking about the ethics of the technology that surrounds us every day. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll set the stage with the central paradox of social media during the pandemic. Then we'll get into the main tool the authors use, Neil Postman's idea of Technopoly. After that, we'll look at the big critique, the dark side, really, before exploring the positive side of what they call the bargain. And we'll wrap it all up with the paper's incredibly relevant conclusions. Okay, so let's go back for a moment. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit and the world went into lockdown, pretty much all of us turned to social media, right? It suddenly became our main public square, our office, our link to everyone we cared about. It was, without a doubt, a vital tool for getting through it all. And that brings us to the core question this paper tackles. While social media was connecting us, was it also exposing us to new and maybe even greater dangers? Was this tool that we all relied on actually a lifeline? Or did it come with liabilities that made the crisis even worse? So to really get to the bottom of this paradox, the authors pull a powerful idea off the shelf from the media theorist Neil Postman. It's his prophetic concept from way back in 1992, Technopoly. So what exactly is a technopoly? Well, Postman saw it as a society where technology is basically put on a pedestal. It's a culture that doesn't just use technology anymore. It looks to technology for its values, for its purpose, for what's right and wrong. Everything else, art, religion, tradition, you name it, it all starts to take a back seat. Postman argued this doesn't happen overnight. He saw it as a three-stage process. You start with tool-using cultures, where tools are just that, tools that serve people. Then you get to technocracy, where the tools start to fight back a little, reshaping the culture to fit their own logic. And finally, you land in Technopoly, where technology isn't just changing the culture, it becomes the culture. And this really gets to the heart of Postman's entire argument. Every new technology is a Faustian bargain, like the old legend. It gives you something amazing, some new power, but it always takes something in return. This paper uses that exact idea to look at social media during the pandemic and asks, what did we get and what did we have to give up? All right, let's start with the costs, the price we paid. The paper argues that the pandemic really rips the curtain back on the dark side of this bargain, and in the process, it unleashed what health officials started calling an infodemic. Yeah, that's a term from the World Health Organization itself, and it's exactly what Postman was worried about. In a technopoly, the sheer amount of information, totally unmoored from any context or reliable gatekeepers, just overwhelms us. It drowns out meaning. And the infodemic was this theory coming to life, with social media algorithms amplifying everything, making it almost impossible to tell the good advice from the really dangerous stuff. And the consequences were, well, they were devastating. The paper lists a whole range of harms, from organized disinformation campaigns to a huge spike in public anxiety and stress. We saw a moral cost, too, with a surge in racism and xenophobia. And we saw critical health information get twisted into cheap entertainment. And all of it was supercharged by filter bubbles and echo chambers, which are classic symptoms of a society that's losing its grip on a shared reality. And here's a crucial point. This whole dynamic just erodes traditional authority. The paper points to examples where political leaders, not doctors or scientists, were using these massive platforms to push questionable health advice. That is Technopoly in a nutshell. The medium itself gives a kind of authority that can completely overshadow established institutions like science and medicine. But Postman wasn't some anti-technology Luddite. He always believed that we as people could negotiate the terms of this Faustian bargain. And the paper makes it clear that during the pandemic, that negotiation was happening too. There were absolutely moments where social media was consciously tamed and used for incredible human good. And you can really see the bargain clearly when you put the two sides next to each other. On the one hand, you have the chaos of Technopoly. But on the other, you have the real benefits we got when we took control of the tool. Things like social connection, sharing reliable info fast, keeping parts of the economy afloat, and getting public health education out there. This taming of the tech happened in very real ways. When a public health organization used a platform to share verified facts, they were taming technology. When scientists used social media data to track how the virus was spreading, they were taming technology. And when millions of us used it to work from home or just check in on a lonely relative, we were all consciously using the tool for a human purpose, which is exactly what Postman said we had to do. So, what's the final verdict? Where does all this leave us? Well, the paper's conclusion is that Postman's ideas are not some dusty old academic theory. No, they're an urgent, necessary tool for understanding the world we're living in right now. The authors actually lay out a path forward, which is basically a playbook for how to negotiate with our technology. To fight the infodemic, we need to promote critical media literacy. To stop ethics from being sacrificed for clicks, we need to create and actually enforce ethical codes. To slow down misinformation, we can use tools like algorithmic labeling. And to stop important knowledge from being dumbed down, we have to prioritize and lift up expert sources. So, the ultimate takeaway here is that we are not powerless. Technopoly isn't some unstoppable force of nature. At the end of the day, technology is something we made. And whether it's used for good or for ill comes down to our awareness, our critical thinking, and our collective will to stay in the driver's seat. But that leaves us with one last pretty big question. The paper makes a great case that we can tame our tech. But now, as we're staring down the barrel of even more powerful, more immersive tools like generative AI and virtual realities, is that human-centered negotiation still possible? Or is Neil Postman's warning more urgent right now than he ever could have imagined?